Hi folks, John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Melia Via. I am up here at Immortals Inc. tonight with Mikey.
What is going on, John? It is a beautiful week, and what are we talking about?
Well, it's scary season, and it's been at least a hot minute since we talked Call of Cthulhu.
It is scary season, and yeah. I found out that we actually recorded our very first podcast October 30th of last year.
All right, so we are coming right up on a year then. It's
coming
amazing.
Right up on the spooky.
Yep, well played. I thought we'd talk some Call of Cthulhu, and the one that grabbed my attention today was this guy. It's called Reign of Terror, and it's for the Call of Cthulhu role-playing game. It's published by Chaosium.
Is that George Washington?
It does look like him, but no, it is not George Washington. Right era, but that is actually a rather famous figure from the French Revolution, because that's where this campaign is set. Traditionally, Call of Cthulhu has three kind of iconic eras. You've got the 1890s, which is kind of their Cthulhu by Gaslight. You got the 1920s, which is the traditional Call of Cthulhu, pulpy, Lovecraftian era, and then modern stuff. This was just a whole different era that they added, and they added it for a reason, but I'm putting the cart before the horse a little bit. So let me get into that. This was written by Mark Morrison, and it was part of the Horror on the Orient Express Kickstarter that they ran back in 2013. There was a lot of stuff that happened with that Kickstarter, and the books didn't end up really coming out until 2017, which is when this one released as part of that. It's primarily a couple of adventures that could be run independently or could tie right into that Horror on the Orient Express campaign, and it includes some pre-generated characters for those. Another note, this is an award winner. It won the Gold Ennie for the best supplement in the 2018 Ennies.
Oops. Sizzle.
Yeah. So have you heard of Horror on the Orient Express?
Yes, I've actually heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
So it is one of the iconic Call of Cthulhu campaigns. And it is have you heard of the Orient Express?
Yes, that's what was familiarized with me.
Right. So the Orient Express was a train that basically ran all the way across Europe into Constantinople. All right. And because that was the Orient in that era when it was running, right? In Horror on the Orient Express, the characters are on those trains and they're trying to track a cult that has a rather nefarious plan. And I don't want to get into the details for the sake of spoilers. Suffice it to say, it is a railroad in the very best possible way. It's a very famous, very highly thought of campaign, and it's a great time. If you get a chance to either run it or play it, I highly recommend it. We don't have any copies on the shelf right now, but Carlos promises me that we'll have some real soon. So hopefully by the time this drops, those will be on the shelf for you to check out. As I mentioned, this book ties into it. It can be run in conjunction with that campaign, but it doesn't have to be. The Horror on the Orient Express campaign is set in the 1920s. This is set during the French Revolution. So you're talking about like the 1780s.
Just a little bit earlier.
Just a little bit earlier.
A little bit.
Yeah. Orient Express originally came out in 91. It was reprinted in 2014 for the Kickstarter and then reformatted into a 2-volume set in 2021. That adventure takes place in London, Paris, Lausanne, Milan, Venice, Trieste, Belgrade, Sofia, and Constantinople. And there's a lot of sidetrack adventures as well. And those can take place in different times and different places, and the characters might even venture off into other places and other times, like the Dreamlands and other things. This is basically a sidetrack adventure where the characters, the players really, have a chance to find out a lot of information about some of the bad guys in the campaign. And those bad guys have, let's just say, strong connections to the era of the French Revolution. We might say some ways they are particularly long-lived. And so this kind of leverages that, right? There's a few pages about life in Paris in 1789, right around the time of the French Revolution. And you probably could use that to run a campaign in that era, but that's not really the focal point of this. There's a couple of pages about the revolution in July of 1789. Again, if you were dead set on running a campaign, this would be fantastic information, or even if you wanted to run other adventures in that era. But it's really more focused on the background you need in order to be able to run these adventures. There are some locations that are nicely fleshed out. You've got maps of Paris, both in 1789 and 1794, maps of the catacombs, in case the players want to go through the catacombs. You familiar with Paris's catacombs, Mikey?
I've seen them online, but I want to go in person.
I do too. I think they would be amazing to see.
It's a bucket list.
Absolutely. And so, there's maps. I'm not sure they're 100% accurate, but they're certainly accurate enough to run a game in them. And then there's also a great map at the Palace at Versailles, another really cool, iconic location. So the first adventure is set in 1789. The second one is set in 1794. You're intended to use the same player characters in both. These are not the player characters that you would be using in the main Horror on the Orient Express. Again, this is a sidetrack adventure, so it kind of ties in and gives the players an opportunity to find out some of the things that happened that led into the 1920s era campaign. But because of the way that's set up, it really can be a cool way for your players to, get immersed more into the setting and find out more about what's going on. That second adventure opens with the players talking about what happened in the years intervening between 1789 and 1794. And then there's sidebars about the terror and society and laws and how things have changed in the intervening years, because the French Revolution lasted a really long time, and there were some really horrifying things that happened during it. Now, one of the other things that gets mentioned in the book is, hey, in history, these were really just some awful people that made these decisions, and that's worth keeping in mind. Adding Cthulhu elements into it maybe provide some rationale or some excuse, and maybe that's not the best way to look at it. Because it is such a horrific era, adding in these other elements could explain why they might have remained hidden in the background too.
I mean, Cthulhu just be dropping into the most random locations. We've seen Vietnam already. I thought that was like the last on the list, and turns out.
And I think we even talked about an adventure where Cthulhu elements made it onto the internet. So,
yes.
Right?
So you can't escape Cthulhu, guys.
No, you really can't. There are a few appendices in here. The first one offers some NPCs, useful for both adventures. The second one gives you a detailed timeline of the French Revolution. Also has a bibliography of some nonfiction sources that you might want to grab, some websites, some podcasts to listen to, some fiction, some graphic novels, and then some film and TV shows. Again, these can be really useful resources if you want to set the tone effectively, or if you want to do more in that era, really just leveraging everything that's here. The book gives you an overview, but it is just that. It's an overview of that era. There's a lot to go on, and in a 128-page book, you can only fit so much along with a couple adventures. The third appendix offers you investigator occupations, which could be useful if you wanted to generate your own characters rather than using the pre-designs that come with this. It also includes things like social class and income and era-appropriate prices, because those are all going to be really useful tools to have in your pocket when you're adventuring in a new era. The last appendix is Appendix 4, and that's Scenario Seeds. Again, this is kind of giving you some extra tools if you want to do more during the French Revolution. There's 9 different adventure ideas that are kind of fleshed out there, though not full adventures, but enough for you to get started if you're already familiar with game mastering for Call of Cthulhu. And they're just ideas for play during the French Revolution. Last appendix, sorry, I think I said last time. There is a 5th appendix.
Second last to last.
Yep. And that's the handouts and the player characters. Those are also available directly from chaosium.com as PDF, so you don't have to cut them out of your book. You can just download them there and print them out. This is 128 pages, it's full color, and it's $35. It's available here on the shelf up at Immortals Inc. It's got some really cool artwork, like I mentioned, some great maps in here.
Go back to that page.
Yeah, that's nicely evocative with
your
guillotine
there in the background.
Can we
show that? I don't know.
Well, we did, so hopefully.
It's my fault.
Stop in and take a look. If this looks like something might be up your alley, we got a few copies here on the shelves. And like I said, hopefully Carlos will be getting some copies of the Horror on the Orient Express campaign that this ties into as well. This is really a great accessory for use with that.
A promise is a promise, John. See what we can do. You know what I mean?
All right. Till next time, folks. Good gaming.
Bye.